Some ghosts are just assholes. There are those what get saved by ghosts and those what don't. Which kind you are largely depends on the ghost in question. I was never sure with mine. Their advice always struck me as a bit off. Not usually it's gonna get you killed bad, but more just inconvenience you bad. Isn't it a ghost's job to keep you safe, though? Like they're the manager for your team or something. Your ghost should be rooting for you like Pete Rose always did with the Reds, even after he got kicked around for betting on the games. I suppose that might not be true of all ghosts. Only the ghosts you know. Only the ghosts of your ancestors, and not the comes with the house sort of ghosts. And mine certainly didn't come with the house. I know, I've moved 6 times in the last 18 years, and I still smell Pall Malls and hear ball games at midnight. Which reminds me, I need to change my ESPN password again. If they'd keep the volume at a reasonable level, it wouldn't be an issue. My assumption is that my ghosts mean to be the helpful kind. Keep me safe and protected. We've just got really different ideas about what that means. Grandmother Harris and I weren't particularly tight even when she was with us in the flesh, partially because that whole side of the family is pretty particular about their looks. Like when Intervention did a special on the Scioto County pill mills, and my cousin Kendra got a little screen time. The only thing my Aunt Polly said was, "Would you look at that chipped nail polish? What was that girl thinking?" Mama's family is pretty particular about not looking common, especially in public. That hit me pretty early on when Grandma Harris took me out to lunch one day at the townhouse restaurant. It was a big deal since she'd mostly ignored me for the first 10 years of my life. This was when she was still alive and bitchin', so she had no excuse to ignore me, not like she does now, being dead and all. It was supposed to be a test for me. See if I'd picked up any manners yet, which even at that age, I knew wasn't likely. When I was 13, my parents shelled out a week's pay so I could go to the Look Right Now Charm and Beauty School at the Lazarus downtown, where they taught me how to act and dress like a lady. But that hadn't happened yet the day of the lunch, so I just came as me, which I later realized was a big mistake. The only music in the front dining room at the townhouse was the tinking of silverware and the awkward shuffling of social positions. I was used to the American, where Granny Morris would take me. There was usually something nice playing like Dolly or Crystal Gale, and we drink Coke out of mason jars, not for kitsch, but because they were large and cheap and stretched your hand nicely. The owner'd do anything he could to make that place feel like home, right down to the musky wood paneling that everyone knew just needed a little Murphy's, but no one quite had the time to do it right yet. The townhouse, on the other hand, had papered walls where the pink hybrid tea rose pattern repeated itself in delicate columns and things lined up so perfectly you almost couldn't see the seams between the sheets. The women with salon-permed hair drank iced tea from wine glasses and spoke in low voices about the low things other women had done that week. As they cut their salads and ignored their rolls, any sound would have been a disruption. So my flip-flops on the hardwood floor were as noticeable as scooting back your chair to sneak out of a meeting. Something I now have great experience with, although I did not at 10. Another thing that I know now that I did not know then is that you're not supposed to cut your salad. You're supposed to fold it into bite-sized pieces. But I still cut it. The ghosts don't seem to mind it in the same way they mind me sneaking out of meetings at work, so I figure it must be acceptable on some level. Grandma Harris smiled politely and nodded her head at each table of pre-Real Housewives of Southern Ohio socialites. In 1985, Grandma Harris had network television's Dynasty and Dallas, which she recognized as clearly out of her league, and clips of Marge shot at the Reds games. So she and most of the other 50-somethings who wanted to be in the swim of it sported their coordinated polyester pantsuits with floral print button-down shirts poking demurely out from their blazers, in imitation of the owner of the Reds they held in very high regard. Flip-flops notwithstanding, I did a pretty good job of getting to the table. I'm a good smiler like my mother. When we got to Grandma Harris's usual table in the center of it all, I lifted the bottom of my yellow sunflower print dress to take a seat. The waiter was a nice man and made no reaction. My grandmother made enough for both of them. Among ladies, you must be a lady. You see those roses on the wall? Those are hybrid tea roses. You know, dear, tea roses are naturally susceptible to disease and rot, so they graft them to a hidden wild rose base so they're beautiful but strong. Do you understand me? Hidden. I didn't understand her, but lacked the sense not to admit it. It means no one should see the base of the rose, so put some underwear on and keep your dress down, dear. I could barely move my ribs once the dress was under me. Kendra, who owned a good 97% of my clothes before I did, still wasn't getting breasts at 13, and mine were already a B cup. Admittedly, there was probably even more reason why I should, that is probably more reason why I should have been wearing underwear, but sometimes you do what you do, you know? Not in Grandma Harris's world, though. I vowed that the next time I'd wear panties, sit like a lady, and not order chicken pot pie. Not a propriety issue. It was just a little gamey and the carrots were rubbery. There never was a next time for me at the townhouse, though. Until her death 2 years later, my monthly Saturdays with Grandma Harris became watching the Reds on TV while she smoked Pall Malls and drank RC. I'd play solitaire with her commemorative Myrtle Beach playing cards and wish for Pete Rose to sprain an ankle just so something interesting would happen. My mom was always cautious from that point on to make sure I wore underwear, and I was mindful about not being around ladies if I could help it. I started seeing them at 13, not long after I graduated from that charm school. About the only thing that stuck from those lessons was that lime green and leopard print don't go together, and that you shouldn't chew your nails at traffic lights. Oh, now come to think of it, I also learned you only use your pinky to apply eyeshadow and never the index finger. That one is your strongest finger, and you'll end up putting it on too dark if you use it instead of the delicate little pinky. You moisturize your face in the winter, but never less than 5 minutes before going outside because it won't be fully absorbed yet, and the wind will push it into your pores, giving you pimples. You avoid jackets and blouses that hit at the widest part of your hips, which pretty much should be self-evident even without being a charm school graduate. With all those little tidbits and tricks floating in my brain, you'd have thought I'd do okay on my own. The ghosts thought differently. You always hear people talking about the ghosts of their ancestors, how they drive them on, how they build them up. Thank you, ancestors. Praise be to my ancestors. God, how I wish I had those kind of ancestors. They started, as such things often do, like voices in another room, as if someone had left the radio half turned to Power 105 and half to the river, and your ear can make out both Toby Keith and Lady Gaga, but not if it's red Solo Cup or Beer for My Horses. The static is both and neither, and if it doesn't differentiate itself quick, you're probably going to lose your mind. Except that once you can hear plainly, you just wish you could go deaf. Or, as I did, wish their little voices came with something more corporeal you could stick a cork in. I guess it wasn't so bad in the beginning when it was just Grandma Harris. The first time she appeared was when I was waiting for William Samuels to show for the 8th grade dance. Since the school wasn't far and the weather was warm, we'd agreed to meet at my house at 7:30 and walk over. At 7:30 tripped on toward 9, and there was no sign of William. I thought maybe I should call to check in on him, make sure I hadn't misunderstood. As I shuffled across our worn-out shag carpet that would have been replaced years before if there'd been any money for it, I felt a spark of what I assumed was static electricity, until I heard her. Of course he's not coming. Just look at that shirt, those tights. Purple and red do not go together. What happened to that subscription to 17 you got for Christmas? Aren't you reading it? Ballerina skirts are out again, you know, dear. By the time I reached the phone, my circuits were pretty scrambled. It was like having my butterfly of a brain run over by a lawnmower and then being left to flutter around inside the clippings catcher. It didn't even calm me down much to learn that William had had an asthma attack and was in the emergency room. The birches had been especially bad, and it was a wonder their yellow dongs of death hadn't gotten to us all. That's what he wants you to think, dear. Did the Howlett girl have a date? Maybe he's taking her. I put the phone down and stared. She was standing by the counter in light green polyester pants and a beige camp shirt from Penny's. Knowing it wasn't nice to contradict the dead, I walked out the door and down the road to the dance that was not only already in progress, but dang near almost over. Going alone, then? She followed after me, asking her string of self-evident and irrelevant questions until the bass from Tone Loc became audible just outside the red gym doors of Rife Junior High. Luckily, this drove her away for the rest of the night, and I could pogo and slam and cabbage patch uninterrupted. I began to think I'd imagined the whole thing. How'd you do? She whispered from her perch on the old steam radiator. I pointed to the B+ at the top of my health quiz, then flipped to the question about the menstrual cycle that I'd missed because I'd listened to her when she said the cycle starts on the last day of your period when the answer was the first. Well, it's a cycle. How are you supposed to know where it starts? I didn't have the heart to tell her that the textbook had clearly said it started with the first day, and even showed a drawing of an elated teen circling the day in red on her calendar with a vague enough date that the school could use the textbook for 20 years, which they probably had been already. But I didn't use the answer I knew was right because nothing but her right answer was going to shut her up. If only I could have just heard the hiss of the radiator and the hum of the fluorescents like everyone else. I was hoping she'd go away. What with my never directly talking to her and all? But she found company instead. I'd never met my great aunt Rosemary when she was alive, so it seemed extra annoying that I would have to put up with her in her death. She was equally as bad at math as her sister, but slightly better at reading textbooks, and so picked up on things a bit quicker. In English and history, they both just sat in empty desks, sucking their teeth and whoofing, as we discussed Clan of the Cave Bears or the 1960s, both of which seemed equally decadent and inappropriate to them. After the William Samuels incident of 1989, I decided that dating was a feat best undertaken sparingly, and so spent much of my free time practicing handling drills on the soccer field. I tried out for the high school softball team one year, but decided better of it when I realized that all that time on the bench was just a free ticket to the Grandma and Rosemary show. Did you know that girl's father used to flirt with me after my Chester died? What? No, which girl's that? That's Simon's girl over in left field. No, and you 10 years his senior. He'd have been better off with me, though. Looks like that girl he married must have been a little on the horsey side. And they'd suck their teeth and gossip, and everyone else just heard the cars going by on Route 52 or the tense mating calls of the cicadas in the woods. So I played soccer. Something about the speed seemed to keep them off the field. They became a distant murmuring from the bleachers, just a "she didn't" and a "oh, how common," floating occasionally over the referee whistles and "good goals," a periodic "humph" among the clapping. College was pretty much a clusterfuck with those two around. I went all the way up to Ohio Northern, thinking maybe there was some unspoken ghost code that would keep them in their home county or near their bones or like something like that. There is not. They looked over my shoulder as I filled out the FAFSA. Oh no, don't take out loans. It's not good to be indebted. Never get out from under that. No, no. They helped out on quizzes in my actuary classes. If a 24-year-old driver with 2 speeding tickets causes a collision, what is the probability of a fatality? Use the chart above. 100%. When she gets home, her mother's gonna kill her. Cackle, cackle, giggle, cackle, cackle. They helped me get ready for dates, as rare as they were. That is too much leg, just too much leg. No, that Tim's okay if she puts on a more modest top. Only a slut does tits and thighs together. Quite true, Rosemary. Quite true. And every day in the dining hall was the same. Just a little vinegar on the salad, dear. You're already well over the freshman 15. Maybe she's thinking in kilograms. Cackle, cackle, giggle, cackle, cackle. Getting the job at Sherman Insurance right out of school was a godsend. Not only did it pay the bills, but it was also tedious. Oh, so painfully tedious, which meant that grandmother and Rosemary weren't around too much. Aside from my boss, Mr. Sherman, and the secretary, Marjorie, most of the people I worked with were either new to town or folks my age coming back after college. So the ghosts didn't know much gossip about anyone. It took them about 2 weeks to realize that they knew nothing about actuary science, despite coming to all my classes with me, so probably by all rights should have picked up at least a little something. And also that it wasn't as much fun to pick on people you didn't know. That all added up to them staying away. Until they heard me telling my mom one day that I thought Marjorie was stealing office supplies. Ooh, you know, her daddy was a county homeboy, don't you? Oh, I did. What kind of a woman marries off with a county homeboy? Obviously one that can't raise her daughter to know better than to take from people who treat her good. The stealing didn't bother me. Studies show that discontented employees are more likely to steal office supplies, or petty cash, than happy employees. Marjorie was just making off with little bits here and there. A ream of paper on a Friday afternoon when Tom was off playing golf. A pack of those nice V5 pens on a Monday morning when Tom was at his monthly breakfast meeting with the boys down at the MT Corral. Or maybe buying herself a little something too when Tom had sent her out to get his wife an anniversary gift. Like I said, it was no skin off my back. Turning her in wasn't an ethical statement. I just wanted the ghosts to shut up about it. Sometimes I wished I could tell people about the ghosts. It would have explained a lot, you know? To William Samuels when we finally did get to have a real date. No, Billy, it's not you. It's just that my dead grandmother is standing behind you faking an asthma attack, and it's a bit distracting is all. To my junior year roommate. What? No, I most certainly was not up at 1 a.m. watching ESPN highlight shows. Oh, wait, that was my dead grandmother and her sister. Sorry. To my mother on her 25th wedding anniversary. Grandmother Harris says to tell you that you married beneath you, but congratulations on your perseverance. But most of all, I wished I could have explained to Marjorie, to let her know that it wasn't my fault that she lost her job. Not my fault that she couldn't feed her kids the organic stuff anymore. It wasn't my fault that she had to cancel her cable and now had to make do with Hulu. Not even Hulu Plus. And whatever she could find on YouTube. And it most certainly wasn't my fault that she not only got fired, but that Tom Sherman had broken off their affair as well. How did the ghosts miss out on that bit of gossip? I'm not saying I wouldn't turn her in again if I had to do it over. What did I care if her kid's ovaries shriveled from pesticides? The ghost stopped coming to work and chittering in my ear all day about her misdoings, which really made it all worth it to me. My morality was based on silencing the bitchy voices of my ancestors in my head, which doesn't seem to really make it all that different from everyone else's. As I drove home last night from the MT Corral's annual Groundhog's Day chili cook-off, it wasn't snowing yet, but the temperature was dropping fast and the road was developing patches of black ice in the low spots. The township said the dips were the city's responsibility, and the city said they were the county's. Grandmother sided with the city and Rosemary with the county, so they had been bickering most of the way home. None of us noticed Marjorie's truck tailing us until we were getting bashed into the guardrail on the bridge of the Scioto. It only took a few good whacks and we'd broken through, heading for the water below. Rosemary noted that if the city had properly maintained the railing, that this would not have happened. Grandmother disagreed. I had seen a TV show a few years ago about surviving an underwater crash and tried desperately to remember the steps they'd given. But it was hard to think with the ghosts in full chitter-chatter mode. Oh, girl, I bet a cute EMT will show up with those nice wool blankets just to stay in the car, but best to just stay in the car and wait. They'll bring a crane, I bet. That water looks mighty cold. Rosemary was always the hopeful one. Cackle, cackle, giggle, cackle. Why can't you remember? You're not trying very hard. SWAT. I at least remember the acronym. SWOT. SWAT. But what the heck did any of it stand for? But if they don't show up, it'd be nice to have you around. We could get to work on that Kendra. She sure could use a little kick in the seat. Rosemarie became disconcertingly giddy about the prospect of my death, and her afterlife to-do list for me seemed to be growing exponentially. Then I remembered that it was SWCO. Seatbelt, window, something with a C, and then out. A benefit to an older model Corolla, on top of the reasonable insurance rates, is the presence of manual windows. Still in the car, I lifted myself to the ever-shrinking pocket of air, took in as much breath as I could, and pulled myself through the newly opened window and into the river. My pants were heavy, so I unbuttoned them and pushed off into the water, hoping that Rosemarie was right about an EMT squad and their warm blankets, hoping I wouldn't just find Marjorie waiting for me on the river's edge. So that is a short story. Short story, just so everybody knows, fiction. I think someone had commented on an earlier piece, a poem. They had commented, yeah, right. And it was a poem about seeing Sasquatch. And I thought, did they think that I thought that I saw Sasquatch? Did they not? They think, I mean, it was a persona poem, right? Like speculative poetry. So, fiction. Do not see my grandmother's ghost. Thank God. Because, I mean, her accent, I have a hard time when I'm reading things about people from my family that I don't want to do their accents because I don't want to seem like I'm being disrespectful, because I think a lot of people put the accents that my family has on characters to make them sound stupid. And like, I don't want people to think that I'm doing that, because my own accent is pretty TV newscastery, and that I've got other poems about that. You can find some more poems. If you look on the playlist about class, there should be some poems about my accent and how hard I worked when I was younger to make any hint of an accent go away. And so I feel like with my current accent, I can't put their accent on characters that are based on them, because then it will seem like I'm making fun of them when really I'm not. I'm just trying to like do my grandmother's voice. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm sensitive about stuff like that, and a people pleaser and all that. So instead I did sort of like generic upper class person, even though she wasn't an upper class person. She was married to a carpenter and had like, I think 7 kids, all said and done. And she worked in factories more. Her mother was a domestic, like my great grandmother was domestic, but my grandmother like worked in factories until she got married and then stayed home with all the kids. So she did not have that accent at all. But for the sake of the story, she does. And interesting thing about this story, I originally wrote this story when I was taking a workshop, which I have not taken fiction workshops for like a very, very long time. So I think it was probably 2012, spring of 2012. And the workshop leader's response to the story, which was a little bit different, but pretty much the same story, but I kind of cleaned it up structurally, learned something in the workshop, I think. Yeah, I liked the workshop. It was fun. But what was funny was that after he heard the story, he said, well, it was funny. It was fun to read, but like there's not much there. There's not much depth there or meaning. We need some metaphors. It's just a funny little story. Now, friends, Tell me you don't understand women without telling me you don't understand women. Am I right? Um, so I actually had gone into the workshop feeling like this is so heavy-handed. Like I just felt like I was taking a big old frying pan and smacking people over the head, right? That like my daily decisions as a woman are directly influenced by the women in my family and their fears and concerns, right? That may be completely outdated and don't do anything for me, really. I felt like I was just like, boom, boom, here's your sledgehammer, boom, boom. Especially when we have lines like, my morality was based on silencing the bitchy voices of my ancestors in my head, which doesn't seem to really make it all that different from everyone else's. Was that line in there when I workshopped it? I don't know, but I know the idea was, and I know so much of like, right? So I feel like the metaphor is just incredibly heavy-handed, and the stuff with the roses, and she's got a sunflower dress on, which is a little bit more wild. Oh, come on, really? That's so heavy-handed. As a poet, like I tend to like my metaphors to be, kind of smooth, a little hidden. Ain't nothing like a long conceit, right? Ooh, John John Donne, he has my heart, right? For those long conceits. So this is pretty heavy-handed, but I think you can do that in fiction a little bit more. Yes. Yes. Okay. My lipstick is bothering me. It's so shiny and I can see myself. It's so shiny and so like the edges are sort of weird because I don't wear this. I mean, I wear lipstick when I do these, but this is like a lip glossy sort of thing and I've got a wig on. I say that near the end of the video after my mother's probably already had a heart attack that I dyed my hair black. Um, um, yeah, sorry, I was distracting myself. You knew I couldn't get through an entire video without randomly saying something. So that was my spooky season short story that I wanted to share with you all. And it comes from this collection, this anthology, Open Your Mouth, which is from LDM Publishing. And the cool thing about this particular anthology is it's all stories about strong women. So there's all strong female protagonists. And the proceeds go to the I believe it's the National Women's Law Center. And the idea for the anthology came out before the Supreme Court decisions on abortion, but when it was starting to become very clear what was happening. And the editors of this, Jessica Rainey and Jay Mazer, live in Texas. And if you know anything about what's been going on, you know what that means. And they wanted to do something. So they did this anthology, which helps to raise money, as well as get some more stories with strong female protagonists out there. And just look at that cover. What an amazing cover that is, right? Does it say who did the cover? Yes. Lisa Vasquez of Unsaintly Art Studios. So you can still pick up a copy, I believe, on bookshop.org. You can still pick up a copy if you want to read the other amazing fun stories that are in here. It felt like just a perfect home for that short story, right? Yeah. It's just a fun story. There's no metaphor, really. Her ancestors literally follow her around and tell her she's dressing like a slut. Really? Nothing? That's all you get? What are you gonna do? If you liked this video, please like this video. And if you want to hear more of my writing, which I don't normally have I feel like I look like I did sometimes in like high school and undergrad, right down to the Wet and Wild. Although I didn't do face stuff much. Uh, like eyeshadow and lipstick and all that. And I think my lips held on to color better when I was younger. That's a thing. I used to not understand why people needed like lip liner and stuff. I understand now because I have like a weird rim. Uh, it just came off my hands. Ooh. You also, okay, look at this. Okay. So, subscribe. That's what I was trying to say. I'm gonna move my wig down. Uh, if you liked the video, like it. If you didn't, move along. You've watched an awful lot of something you don't like. Please don't hate watch me. Subscribe if you want to hear more of my poetry. And fiction. I tend to write about issues of gender and class are my two big things. I also write a lot about CPTSD and trauma disorders in the work that I have. So subscribe and also look around my site and you can see lots of cool, if I do say so myself, short stories and poems and 2 essays. Don't write essays very often. I like to hide in fiction and poetry, but there are 2 essays that you can find. Thanks for stopping by.